say something's gone wrong in your repository, you don't want to have to get up in the morning and say, oh my God, something's gone wrong. Should I have coffee or should I investigate? You shouldn't have to make that trade-off because the agent should have already investigated it for you. So you should be able to just go to your breakfast, have your coffee, read the report, read the analysis, and it says, here's a possible fix for it. Here's actually made a pull request for it. And you go, oh yeah, man, we got to fix that. Let's get that in. But it should be there, ready for you. The agent should be proactive and should be immersed in a world of cooperative agents.
Welcome to the Agentic DevOps podcast, and I am your host, Bret Fisher, back with another episode about one of my most exciting things that I'm working on this year, the project that I am adopting on GitHub, and I am trying to dig into the weeds as much as possible because I think that GitHub is on to something, specifically GitHub Next and Microsoft Research, which are both the research arms of both those organizations, and they're working together to evolve GitHub Actions to what it would be if it was AI native. What would it be if AI was there in a safe and reproducible way that we could sandbox and protect in a very detailed and heavily scrutinized way? And it's not what you think. It is not simply just adding LLM prompts into GitHub Actions, which you could do today and you've been able to do for years. It's not simply just adding Claude code as a step in your GitHub action. Those are things that already existed. But out of GitHub Next last year, we heard about the early alpha beta release of something called Agentic Workflows, which is technically what I would call a feature of GitHub Actions, but it's a whole website now with tons of examples, a team working on it. And when you really dig into the details of what this is, I think this is the only way we should be doing anything with an AI inside of GitHub Actions. If we are prompting in GitHub Actions, they should be using this tool, in my opinion. As I dig more into this, and then the recent Claude Code security concern that we had, and then all of the security concerns we've had around GitHub Actions lately related specifically, not to the supply chain per se, but specifically to workflows that are getting basically prompt injected through untrusted prompt input. That is one of the biggest risks anywhere we put a model, whether it's in a chatbot or it's in our automation or it's in front of some of our systems. If someone can put untrusted text in a place that somehow doesn't get verified by a trusted member of our team before it goes to a model, that's a risky place to be. And that's part of our job. Platform engineers, DevOps, security engineers, like we're all very concerned about that, right? We're maybe a little bit trepidatious on what we should be doing with these things today, which is automating more of our systems, because we don't want to be that person on the team that gets caught putting risky AI stuff into automation. Because as we know, automation can make good things really easy. It can reduce toil, but it can also automate the bad things if we're not careful. And you can sometimes automate yourself all the way into an outage. So we have on the show this time, Dawn from GitHub Next. That's their research arm full of PhDs and experts that are trying to figure out tooling for the future of GitHub. Personally, I just love GitHub Next. I'm always on their website, githubnext.com, and looking at what they're working on, because to me, it's like reading the tea leaves of where the big money is researching for the future of software development lifecycle. And we also have Peli from Microsoft Research, who's also on the team building this product and using it daily, which we get into exactly how they use it. And I'm really excited because I feel like this system has a lot of rigor to it, which is what I'm looking for. And when I'm thinking about implementing AI anywhere in my automation, especially when it comes to CI, CD automation, possibly anything around my code repos, I'm wanting that to be as secure as possible. So I look to make my steps with traditional programming, and then only as a last resort when I need a judgment or maybe a consolidation of text or a summary of text. That's when I consider putting in models. And I used to just attach Claude Code, maybe build a workflow around that, or attach Codex or Copilot as a step. But this is something totally different. You use command line tools to generate something that is a very long workflow. You use CLI tools to create a lock file to make sure that that doesn't change. You establish rigor around making sure that the prompts and the things that you're trying to create with AI are trustworthy and can be sandboxed and protected properly. And I feel like the depths that I've gone into after this show that we're going to get into in a second, I feel like I now can say this is how I'm only going to be doing the GitHub Actions. So welcome to the show, Don and Peli, and let's get into it. Don, tell us who you are and how you got here.
Bret, thank you so much. The introduction is through our mutual friend, Ben, who works as a product director at GitHub Actions. And yeah, we are having a blast. I work at GitHub Next, and I am now working on, I guess, what we'd call AI agentic DevOps or continuous AI, agentic software, automated agentic software engineering, and lots of associated topics. And yeah, I got a long background in kind of programming language design and runtime design, and done a lot of product delivery over the years in Microsoft and other places, a lot of DevOps along the way. And yeah, I've been at GitHub Next a few years now, and I absolutely love it. Yeah, we got a charter to investigate the frontier of software development, and there's never been a more exciting time to be doing that, a time where things are so nascent and things are in formation and change and turning upside down. You're really able to kind of radically rethink a lot of things. I mean, a lot of it turns your head upside down, just how much things are changing. But, I'm enjoying that very much.
The good moment to be here. I think I keep reminding myself, I don't know, a couple times a week it feels like that, just reflect on the fact that you're in the middle of this, and that like when you look back on it, these are the stories we will tell, and like be present, because I look back at the cloud and the mainframe to PC migration and like all the sort of large infrastructure evolutions that I've been a part of. When you're in the middle of it, I was too young to realize that it was of significance. And as I've grown older, I've started to see the patterns. And so I can sort of feel like this is it. This is a thing. This is exciting. This will not happen. This will not be like this forever. And we will look back on this as, wow, that was crazy. So yeah, welcome. I'm glad to have you here.
My name is Peli de Halleux. I'm an engineer in Microsoft Research in a group called Research in Software Engineering. We're also very interested in things like verification, testing, all this kind of stuff over the years. And I had been looking at LLM automation back in the days before agents, and got in contact with Don in GitHub Next. And we decided to kind of work together on this idea of continuous AI. This kind of started this project, and that was a year ago, roughly. But we had been working with Don from a distance from Microsoft on various projects. We've been around for a while. Yeah. So that's the intro. I've been working on developer tools for professionals, but also for kids for a while. I've built K-12 coding platforms.
Nice. Is there an analogy between a K-12 learning platform and agent harnesses?
It is. There's a lot of things that people don't realize in the way it's designed. It is designed as a sandbox, just like I built the coding infrastructure for Minecraft. So when kids learn to code in Minecraft, so there are some design patterns that are applicable. These agents are finicky little monsters. So we got to talk a lot about kind of sandbox design and API design and things we do under the hood to make it more reliable when people say, agents are unreliable.
Right.
So we do a lot of work under the hood to remove that. But also we talk a lot about safety, because when we have a real sandbox, you can't just experiment, you can build castles without destroying the world. So there's a lot of that is baked in, but it's made for professional. It's made for DevOps. It's made for people who are actions users. But it's actually, it happened. I didn't realize I was designing the system like that. And then after the fact, it's like, whoa, this kind of feels like I've rebuilt a system that I've built for so many times for that environment. Yeah.
Okay. So it became apparent after it was happening.
Yes.
And I should back up, because I think we got connected because I heard about agentic workflows last year when it was before GitHub Universe, and it was like early beta or maybe even before that. And I think I was like requesting early access to get in because it was right up my alley, and I had no idea what it was, and just knew that at the time I was building a GitHub Actions course, still am, recording videos week by week. And I've been a big GitHub Actions fan for, at least 5 or 6 years, since before we had reusable workflows and a lot of the niceties we have nowadays, because I really kind of saw that as the evolution of the everyone's CI, almost kind of what Jenkins represented in the industry for so long, where it was sort of the default. And I was so anxious for another winner to replace Jenkins, because I was tired of maintaining the infrastructure. And then, got onto GitHub Actions, saw the advantages of having it built right into where our code storage was and where everything else was. And that just really fit, I think, with a lot of my clients and a lot of my community. And so over the years, GitHub Next, which we should probably talk about what that is, I've always looked at GitHub Next, a couple times a year to try to see the tea leaves that you all are reading and figure out what's next for GitHub, what's the exciting thing that might come to fruition, whether it's a font package, which is my favorite fonts that I use everywhere today, or some feature in the UI of GitHub that was considered a new experiment in how we represent the information. And it's been fun to watch that because you feel like you're kind of seeing the skunk works or the deep think of an organization in public. And that's been a really cool thing that I don't think a lot of people know about. Obviously, Microsoft Research is the same thing that's been around for decades, but it was cool to see that so close to the coding platforms that we're all using every day. So last year, if I'm setting this up correctly, there was an announcement around GitHub Agentic Workflows as an idea, and then you announced it at Universe. And then since then, I feel like it's been like off to the races, incredible documentation, slide decks that are available that you all are putting out. There's a lot of information that I think has to come along with this because it's not an obvious evolution necessarily of how, it's not just like one little feature added to a workflow. So who wants to take up the mantle describing elevator pitch the agentic workflow concept?
I mean, I'll just run through the kind of three principles, right? One is the idea of agentic repository automation. When people talk about agents, I think there's been something missing in the conversation, okay, which is about you want agents that are proactive. That's what I think of when I think of an agent. I don't know where the idea came in around the world that agent was something you invoked from your chat session, right? I don't know who invented that, because when I think of the word agent, I think of something that kind of is there around me. It does stuff. It knows what's happening in the world around me. And in the context of a repository, that means it kind of knows what's happening in the repository. And when I think about things like I want to refactor my code so that all the files are under a certain size, I want to check my error messages to check that the language is age appropriate for a particular target audience, or hundreds and hundreds of other things I want to do in my repository. Those are things I want to do continuously. They're not something I want to just do once. Okay, I don't want to have to stand up every day and kind of say, we added some error messages, got to reestablish that kind of principle that the error messages are all in good shape or whatever. A GitHub repository fundamentally is a continuous, growing, evolving, collaborative kind of space. And it's got a history that's very interesting and long from wherever it came from, and it's got a future, and the agents, anything that happens in the repository has to be established to happen on a continuous basis. It's got to be able to be adaptive to the change that's happening in the repository. If you're going to have AI working, the pull request is also a continuous kind of object. It's got to kind of go with you, the journey all the way through. The repository is a journey. And we've been digging, to me, that's the heart of what GitHub is. It's like, that's just central. That's why it's the place where everybody comes to work together. It's why continuous integration and continuous deployment makes sense there. And so if you're going to do agentic working, you want to establish it on a continuous basis. We all know the examples. Continuous documentation, continuous code improvement, continuous fault analysis, proactive kind of fault analysis. You don't want to have to say something's going wrong in your repository. You don't want to have to wait. You don't want to have to kind of get up in the morning and say, oh my God, something's gone wrong. Should I have coffee or should I investigate it? Right? You shouldn't have to make that trade-off because the agent should have already investigated it for you. Because the flow is to investigate a fault in CI or a fault in your website or whatever, where the fault signals are coming from. The flows are encodable. You know all the steps you want to do. You've probably written them out in your kind of documentation and so on. So you should be able to just go to your breakfast, have your coffee, read the report, read the analysis, and it says here's a possible fix for it. He's actually made a pull request for it, and you go, oh yeah, man, we got to fix that. Just get that in, right? So it should be there, ready for you. The agents should be proactive and should be immersed in a world of cooperative agents. And when you think about that kind of vision, that's quite close to the idea of assistance in your repository, sort of a virtual team in a way. They're not humans. Okay, I don't like the anthropomorphization, but
it's hard not to though. It's hard to, yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many times in my working life I've wanted assistance in various repositories. I think there's so much, I don't know how to do really good engineering in various dimensions in every repository I have to kind of touch. So bringing in this proactive assistance, I know. And so when you think about it, where are we? Let's make that real. We're sitting in 2025 and let's make that real. What's the ideal experience? Let's platform fit that onto GitHub as a concept. And you go, actions. Actually, actions has got a lot of trouble. Yeah, you start thinking, will we automatically generate some big complex YAML, which kind of is like compilation of some intent or something like that. And then you realize, actually, no, I just want to run those amazing coding agents, which also appear around that time, I just want to run them in actions on a kind of continuous basis. Okay. And what would be the ideal simple? Let's make that simple. Let's make that as simple as possible. That would be check in a markdown file, which describes your prompts, and it runs. And you have check, and it gives some triggers, like in actions. Everything just works. That's the kind of core idea of GitHub Agentic Workflows, is to make it, to capture the simplicity, the beautiful simplicity of GitHub Actions YAML. You know, people have got all sorts of complaints about GitHub Actions and YAML and so on, but it's got a massive advantage, which is it is damn really simple to use. You just check in a file and you have magic. Right.
Yeah.
And that's for existing YAML. And one way that people put it, I think Ben puts it this way, is that Actions is a way for average developers, repository maintainers, to get access to some cloud resources. They get access to cloud compute, networking, and some storage in the context of a repo. And they don't have to go ask the security team. A permission grant has been given by the company that decides to let you use GitHub or your open source repositories. You get this amazing playground, and it's not just it's actually like a factory space, right? It's actually like, it's got storage, it's got network, it's got so much compute. And these days, now we're bringing kind of coding agents into that kind of factory. And so that's the simplicity of it. You're running through the kind of add wizard kind of thing here, which is kind of saying, you're helping you set up your tokens as well in the video. And it says, would you also like to trigger the workflow? And then bang, you've got your first repository automation running. And that thing, I think, is set up to run daily. You can kind of change it to run weekly on different kind of schedules, different triggers and so on. And bang, brought the most powerful coding tools into your factory, onto your factory floor. And the potential is limitless now. You have got all the power to automate everything, in creative things, analytical things, problem-solving things, code improvement things, everything is set up in the GitHub repository now. Okay, so that's the vision. Repository automation with the coding agents you know and love. You can use Claude, you can use Copilot CLI, you can use Gemini CLI, and I think we're adding some more Codex as well. And we will take proposals for new ones as well. So that's it. Repository automations with the coding agents you know and love, safely with strong guardrails. We'll get onto that in GitHub Actions. That's the format, nice and simple.
Nice. That's a good elevator pitch. One of the challenges, I think, if we think of the entire software lifecycle on GitHub, I've always experienced this with every piece of software I've implemented as sort of a DevOps ops person, is anything that I put in, even if its goal as a product or a tool to automate something, like even putting in GitHub Actions as a thing to help me automate traditional before we had agents, there always was a cost of toil that was added on top of that I could not escape. And when I teach GitHub Actions, a lot of, it's obviously there's the day zero creation of these YAMLs, but the day two stuff is arguably even more important because it rarely gets discussed, like in getting started guides and stuff like that. And so over the years, GitHub Actions has added functionality to reusable workflows and templates and .github repo opportunities there. And there's been a certain level of trying to manage this giant beast that we've all created when you have hundreds of repos, and now that means possibly thousands of YAML files to manage. And I don't like using the word at scale. I think like it's way overused, and a lot of us aren't even dealing with scale. We're just small teams. But I always felt like there was this challenge of, we're going to implement this CI tool for you, but you probably need someone's half a day a week maybe or more to fix the broken workflows, to update the GitHub, approve the PRs for the action upgrades, to make sure that the Dependabot is configured correctly with all the latest stuff. And so there's a lot of this sort of hidden toil. And I was going to throw the question to you of, do either one of you see this future where it feels like there might be a possibility here where we can add features or functionality or solve problems without adding additional toil, but also maybe that toil might be managing the agents, like updating the agent skills or the configuration, or like that becomes the new human toil layer that we have to maintain? Or do we think that this is the gain is far exceeding possibly the toil involved with that. What do you think about that?
So essentially, we compile down to action.
Yeah.
So our markdown becomes an action. So we inherit all the toil. Today we have all the toil that you have to do. However, we're working closely with the GitHub Action team, and we're looking at that toil. We're looking at the sources of that, and we're looking for a solution to get rid of these, the requirement to, there's no way to push an action over an entire org. You always have to push fast. Things like that. It's like, can we make this better? So we're looking at these problems where you start to have hundreds and thousands of repos and everything becomes a scale problem. So there is definitely work being there for the action product itself to be able to fix those.
Oh, you mean
but
sort
in
of
general,
a deterministic level, like something that's just a feature of GitHub is a
feature of action to be just
Yeah.
better at this. But aside from that, we can go and attack any toil and automate it, anything, because now we have the ultimate reasoning hammer that we can just point at a problem, just go systematically on every repo, do some reasoning, right? You can take, in fact, any deterministic tool and wrap it with an agent and point it at any repo and, hope for the best. It might give you a result, but let's say your dependabot thing, it's always slightly different for every repo. But now you have an agent that's actually pretty good at dealing with that. You can go and run campaigns over your repos and fix complying issues and things like that. That a deterministic tool would fail. These agents are able to go and I think that's what you mentioned by toil.
Yeah.
But we also inherit the limitation of the actions today because we're working on that, but that takes time. But it's on our radar.
I got a different thing for the toil. It's kind of like, it does cost something to kind of create automations. It kind of costs something, costs you personal time, and there's ongoing maintenance time to create existing GitHub Actions YAML. A couple of things kind of change a bit. One is that because we're dealing with coding agents, it's possible to create extremely, you might think of it as ambiguous, but it's actually kind of general kind of workflows. So you can kind of create, one of my favorite workflows is to do with repository maintenance, and it's called Repo Assist. And it's a multitask workflow, and it kind of each day, it's got like 11 tasks, I think, and it kind of rolls a dice each day to say, hey, what am I going to do today? Okay, because you don't want it to do all of them because we only do the first three or so. It just rolls a dice, just kind of get things nice and balanced. One of them is, for instance, to label issues, just to make sure all the issues I can check most recent issues and look at the backlog and just make sure all the labels are kind of, and you don't have to write that out algorithmically, right? You just kind of tell it the end state that you want and maybe some hints about how to get there, about what the journey is it has to make. And, pretty much what I just said, really. And it'll work out all the rest of the details, in the sense that that's the prompting that will be running each day or every third, fourth, fifth day or whatever runs. And it sorts out the rest in any repository for any set of labels, for any language. You don't have to work in English, you could be working something else. So whereas in a traditional setting, you might have had to configure the exact labels to use, configure the kind of the kind of heuristics to use to label issues and so on. In this setting, it can be made to work everything. And that's really golden because that means you have these very generic workflows which can be used in many different settings. I mean, other tasks in that repo are things like work through the issues and just analyze them one by one, not all in one run, just do a bit of that frontier work and do a depth investigation, do a reproduction, and give some advice about what to do about this issue. And it's sort of what you do with a coding agent today. You might check it out locally and investigate the kind of thing, but it's all done for you proactively. And again, it's very general, right? It's the sort of thing we could never have programmed up 2 or 3 years ago because it's amazing, things these agents do. But it's also very general. And that means the burden, I use Repo Assist in, I think, 12 different repos. They're all different, and I haven't had to change it really between any of them. So you can have these very generic, powerful tools which help you make progress expressed at the right level, low enough that it actually kind of knows what it's doing. It doesn't just do something canned, but general enough it's really applicable to everything.
I'm starting to see enough teams that are tiptoeing into agents in their CI, essentially, right? Somewhere sticking a model and writing a prompt in some fashion to a model, whatever we want to call that. And I think a lot of the teams that I'm working with see the first experience is sort of, it's a checkbox feature in GitHub. Like they might turn on the PR review agent for Copilot, and it's sort of an on-off thing, or you can opt in to each PR. and it just becomes a feature. So it doesn't really feel, I mean, even it's providing automation, and obviously it does, it puts comments in the PR, it does all these things, but it's not something that they have to hobby kit implement, right? They're not writing a YAML file necessarily on day one of that. So I feel like that's the first phase. And the second phase is where they want to actually see everybody else putting Claude code into a CI run, or I notice nowadays it's actually getting pretty rare to look at the maintainers or the contributors to a repo, and that Claude logo is always there, it seems like nowadays. People are sort of figuring out how they can either write code or review code. That feels almost like, for me, that wasn't the most interesting part. To me, so someone who had to maintain the CI, I was always looking for things that would, automatically troubleshoot a failed check, right? And try to provide an automated, because I'm that person who's usually responsible when the checks fail, because the dev team's going to push back and say, yeah, there's a configuration issue. It's not our fault, blah, blah, blah. And so we're going to have that back and forth there. And I've started to describe this because people aren't even really sure where to start. And I love that the Agentic Workflows website, the documentation, really is starting to categorize these things into certain areas where you're finding success and you're seeing the good metrics coming out of those results. But I've often tried to describe it to them as just find a place where there's huge human judgment involved, that you've previously had to involve a human, but it wasn't a deliberate gate. Because a lot of people get nervous about, I think, the idea of AI in their CI, because the first thing they might or one of their first thoughts might be, well, I don't want it to automatically deploy to production. And to me, that's like, of course, yeah, that's probably the last thing I'm going to automate with any sort of model. That is, to me, sometimes a lot of teams, it's a manual gate we intentionally put there. And so we're enforcing a human stop point. But there's so much other this, like you mentioned, labels, automatically labeling, automatically, maybe approving like low risk patch releases of Dependabot updates or something. Like there's probably some low hanging fruit there. I certainly have been a part of teams where we've had to implement that cross repo auto labeling, even just synchronizing back when we didn't have it, synchronizing label names across repos, just a lot of sort of silly stuff that maybe just wasn't a feature in the product yet, and we were backfilling it with some sort of manual automation. That feels like the ripe opportunities for people getting started. But do you frame it that way, of look for opportunities where there's human judgment that we have today, but it wasn't because we enforced a human to get involved. We just didn't have a way to automate that with a for each loop. Is that something that you frame it that way for?
Yeah, I'd personally like to begin with a chat about what are the problems people are having in the repo? Like, what are the actual struggles that are happening? Okay, so in the case of Repo Assist, having that chat with myself, the problem is we've got an issue backlog of 200 issues that go back years and years and years. And every time I come to this repo as a maintainer, I don't know what to do with them. I don't want to close them out because there's value there. I know there are bugs there, and I don't want to leave bugs that people have found around this software. So my problem is one of kind of the burden of being a maintainer, the guilt in a way. You kind of, it's not, I haven't got on top. I love to get on top of the repo. I love to get that issue count down in the below 100, below 50, below 10. And so the flow is designed to help me solve that problem and reach where I want to be. So I kind of like to have the discussions about, like, what are you trying to achieve here? What are your goals? What are your quality goals you're after? Is performance the top thing? That's your problem is quality and crunching out the bugs. The problem is integration and kind of cross-repo kind of working. That's absolutely in a lot of settings a kind of problem, making things regular across multiple repos is a good example. So once you start the conversation about, tell me what's making life painful, what's causing you to lose sleep, then will cause you to disengage from the repo or whatever. I don't know, Peli, how do you begin the conversations?
I'm doing extreme agentic development in the way that I'm at 400 plus PRs a week, exclusively through, Agentic Workflows is written with agents. And the challenge is, how do you create quality software doing that?
Yeah.
And this involves many, many agents looking at the generated code, cleaning it, adding tests, extracting specs, generating tests from specs. So there's an entire intricate set of agents that are running and that are powered by Agentic Workflows, that are running in the repo, and that are looking, it's really exploring, so we can generate code at an incredible rate now. But we've always known that creating a feature was a tiny piece of the equation. You had to do test plans, you had to design features, research, you had to write documentation, maintain it. All that stuff is ripe for automation. And where does the human fit in? Where does the engineer come in and, say no? In my stat, I think 20% of the PRs, I refuse them. There's still quite a bit of engineering involvement. I do maybe three intervention per PR. So there's still quite a bit of steering from me, but I have a lot of tools that are agentic workflows that are optimizing very specific angle of a code base, like reducing code duplicates, fixing linter issues. And, these are kind of sound practices that software engineers have been doing. And then we go down the rabbit hole and we're like, oh, well, we always fix something. So now we extract linters. So we infer linters from our own practices. Your devs are always fixing the same bugs. Maybe it should be a linter. And then once you have a linter, you have something that's very scalable in terms of compute and cost. And then but there's something we discovered with the agent. They're very meta. Agents can help agents, can generate agents, and agentic workflows are an instance of that. The workflows are really specialized tools in my mind. They use agents, and everything's an agent, so we have to put different names. But I build tools. And one of the unblocker of this experiment is that I can go from an idea to a tool in 5 minutes. That is running in the CI and giving you the first version will be trash, it will not work, it will crash. And then there's a self-reporting loop. And 2 or 3 iterations, you have something that actually creating the value. And then, 10 more loops, you start optimizing and saving tokens. But that's essentially the key thing is zero friction from your idea to an automation that's bringing value to your project. That's paramount.
Yeah.
Yeah. The repository as the kind of agent foundry, the agent host, the place where you can just create and deploy your automation and get it to do everything over, the fabric of the repository, create issues, can add issue comments, can read existing issues, it can create pull requests, it can add to existing pull requests. Those are the kind of discussions of the other elements of the information fabric, and it can read the security reports, it can look at the actions, it can look at the CI runs. And so that's the information fabric you're working over. And it makes you look at a lot of the stuff that people are doing with agent harnesses differently, because you don't really need to think about where you put your to-do list. Let's just put it in an issue, right? You don't need to think, where do you put the output? The analysis of, say you've got an agent which is kind of checking performance every night, different dimensions of performance, kind of running through them, or checking your getting started guide, reading your docs and kind of running through the kind of getting started material and making sure it's simple and making sure everything kind of works, right? As basic kind of walkthrough kind of things. Where does it put its output? I don't want to have to think about deploying this to some agent foundry and some other platform. Right? It's just going to run in GitHub and it's going to write its output to GitHub. That it's going to create an issue or add a comment to an existing issue, or it's just going to create a pull request and fix the thing directly. Depends on the design that you want. And so you mentioned it earlier with GitHub Actions about how having it right there next to your code is just a great thing. And it's the same with this. It's like right there on the information fabric we all know and use. It knows how to use the GitHub information fabric. Issues and how to query them, how to serve pull requests and so on. So I love that. I love that it's operating in my home, in my place where we get work done together. And I love that I can dig back to the actions log and see exactly what happened. I love when the agents of the actions log to work out what went wrong. Right. So
the inherent.
Every time you come back to the graph, to GitHub, the engineer can intervene. The human is back in the loop. The agent does some computation, creates an issue.
That's right. It gives that natural place for the human to be in the loop. Yeah. And that can be so confusing when you kind of disassociate from the factory and take it to the outside from the repo. And you wonder, where's the human going to be in the loop in this kind of stuff that I'm drawing out? And the answer is really simple, right? It's in the pull request, right? It's okay if okay. First of all, its actions, what it does to the issue set of issues has to be really tightly constrained. And that's where we can start to talk about guardrails. It's not allowed to delete every issue. It's not allowed to close every issue. It's not allowed to comment on every issue or randomly kind of write all over the place. It's got really strong limits over what it can do. It can add a comment to a single issue, for example. That's a super strong limit. Okay, but it can do that automatically. It's not going to boil the ocean or what its expression to let it act on the issue section. So it's kind of it's sort of big, enormous scratch pad for these agents to work on. And that again, it makes it clarifying because, it's not writing to the repo. It's not like writing a to-do or goals.md or tasks.md into the repo like a lot of people are doing. It's very tempting to use the repo as the scratch pad, but it's not going to do that. So we've got our scratch pad, that is issues, and it's got its way of proposing forward action in the world, which is pull requests. And or you can also propose an issue or propose a pull request, an actual concrete change. It's very common we get the agentic workflows to create issues instead of going straight to a pull request because, again, it's kind of divided into a world where it's roughly is it going to take one kind of check, yes, do it thing in the pull request, or does it kind of offer choices? If it's offering choices, then you'd better create an issue first because the human really needs some guidance. The agent really needs some guidance about what's the next step. But in that, the human in the loop is really simple. It is just at digesting what the agent does in the issue space, the comments it adds, the options it gives, and acting in the pull request space to make a big change, progress forward in the code towards the goals that everyone's pursuing together. I love that. I love that I know what human in the loop means. I love that it just very clarifying in what is, and it's also something I can trust. If all it's going to do is create a pull request and just one of them is that, it's almost certainly going to be useful what it creates. So first, that's great, but it's certainly not. I can trust, I can sleep well at night that the thing is doing things in a positive direction, or certainly not in a significantly bad direction. So guardrails and security, super, super important. Very worried about something you said earlier, just to be controversial. You were saying run Claude code or these coding agent CLIs directly in GitHub Actions. I understand the temptation of that. And in fact, the origins of GitHub Agentic Workflows are in that kind of space, but it's really dangerous, right? We call that kind of running naked, kind of running without a security architecture, or rolling your own security architecture, or attempting to do the reanalysis of the security architecture at every time, every workflow you do. That's really easy. Mistakes. And you're being exposed to inputs. You've got the world's most powerful coding tools, and frankly, they can be used for good and they can be used for bad, right? And they are running in GitHub Actions with potentially access to secrets under the direction of arbitrary people walking up to the repo, of people feeding in information. Okay, so it's a little bit like you hire an amazing team of people. They're sitting in an office and you're allowing people to walk in through the front security gate and just feed them notes about what to do under the door. And they read them. They go, oh, yeah, I'll do that.
And they think those are just as important as the boss's notes.
They'll just, you can try and box it and try and tell it's not so important. And of course, you do all those things. But it's still, you kind of want the security guard at the desk. And you want the security guard, you particularly want, you want any outward action, any right action from that team, any external action in the world, any information sent outside. If you're worried about private information leaking, it's got to have a security architecture. You must, if you're going to run automated coding agents in the context of anything sensitive whatsoever, you must have a security architecture. Full stop. You do not leave home without that in any serious way. And that's
the security landscape is different than what people think is secure. It is not just running in a container. There's a lot more threat. These things are intelligent.
Yeah. So for instance, running in a container, but in our model, we have some very strong guarantees and we really care about security. That's because we're trying to stop people getting work done or anything, but because we think the better the guardrails you have, the faster you can run. Okay. The faster the automation can go. The better the train tracks are, the faster a train can go, the more you can ramp up the TGV up to high speed because you trust the rails you're on and nothing's going to go wrong along the way. And that's how it actually works with GitHub Agentic Workflows. Let's just run through some of those guardrailing kind of things. Perhaps one of the really big ones is that the agentic step, the actual coding agent, the reasoning that runs read, with just one narrow, safe output that it's allowed to make. And that is a really strong thing. All right, we are not giving these things right access to MCPs. In our MCP docs, we say if you're going to add in extra MCPs, you should not give them right access to the external world. You should design these safe outputs instead, which are very tightly controlled handover points. And when you really digest that, it's running read-only without access to any secrets because we go through a gateway to access container and got the gateway. Those two together, huge relief. There's no chance it's going to leak all your repository secrets, right?
Right, because it never had access to begin with.
It never had access, and it's got a firewall around it for network access as well.
Yeah.
There's still concerns about there, but they're known concerns. You can calibrate what's going on in that landscape, and that allows me to sleep well at night when these things run. When we first started running coding agents and actions, I was worried that we were creating actions that were going to be hackable, subvertible, compromisable, and you do get those people. But it's this very tight containerization, read-only, no access to secrets, and very narrow scope of action in the safe output. And together these allow me. I'm a guy who worries about things.
As we should. I think that's been a hot topic. In fact, I'm doing some workshops, and I'm actually speaking at a conference this summer around GitHub Actions security. And I've also got a little plug for a open source tool I'm about to release called GASA, GitHub Actions Security Assessment, that really just kind of takes the top 10 things that I see, or the top dozen that teams I work with, or, and I've been studying a lot of these GitHub Action supply chain attacks and trying to understand where the core misconfigurations are, because that's really what we're talking about in almost all these cases. Is really just
the problem in this 7-step attack.
Yeah.
Where did that go wrong? Yeah.
Right. What step in there can we secure immediately and without consequence, or usually without breaking anything? And so that's one of the. I'm trying to build a little tool that helps people discover that, because a lot of these things are just like features of the platform that people don't thoroughly understand. That event in a GitHub Action workflow, or that particular checkbox in the security settings of GitHub Actions in their repo settings, that they left it by default because they didn't understand it. They don't know the caveats. And so go ahead. I was going to set you up real quick for this and just say,
go ahead.
Yeah, like what if people aren't fully aware of what we're talking about here? If you just add like a step in a workflow, and maybe your workflow before didn't exist, and you add a new workflow to assess an issue, right? Like you need some automation around the title, and maybe for it you're thinking, I want to have a model intuitively select the label based on what it sees in the description, the title. And so we've seen some disastrous, often cases where people they add a step to a workflow, they put a prompt in there that basically says, please read through this and then decide the label. And here's my GitHub workflow, my action token out of the gate by default, which may or may not have full privileges to the entire repo. And you think that, well, I'm giving it a prompt to just change the issue, or just to just change the label of an issue, or maybe add a comment or something at most. But they don't really understand the effect or the causality of what they just did and prompt injection. So can you maybe set that up as like the problem with that and how this helps prevent that? Obviously, you said like removing secret access and all that.
I can take on that.
Yeah.
Looking at the token you have with the agent, let's say you have to write an issue. So you're doing issue write can, create, delete, update any issues in your repo at an insane rate.
Right.
And the title might be a prompt injection that changes the goal of the agent. Suddenly the agent has been reprogrammed to close all your issues, or to implant malware to all your issues, but basically there's nothing preventing the agent from saying, oh, sure, let me go and, I'll curl 500 times and pass the token and do it. So that's the danger, that these agents are extremely powerful. And the security posture and the security construct we have, we say read-only, it's at the token level. It is a deterministic guarantee by the GitHub Action platform. It is not based on any kind of prompting. This is a strong guarantee that you basically adhere to because you're using the permission object in action. The same thing where we say there's no secrets in the container, then you kind of some level of trust containers and so forth. So our security story is based on DevOps primitives that are well known in industry, containers and permission scopes and things like that. And that is the deterministic secure box we built. So we don't rely on agentic. We have some agentic protection, but as much as possible, we want to build a box that is deterministically, provably safe. Some extent,
right? Some
guarantees.
Vibe security. That's what we call it.
So when you use GitHub Agentic Workflows, you write this markdown and you write some front matter. Okay, it's lovely, right? The front matter looks a lot like Actions. Yeah, I mean, it will be familiar to people. There's some differences, but it's pretty familiar territory. And you run this step called ghaw compile, okay, and it can produce the lock.yaml, which is a YAML that actually runs. And that compile, actually, I wish we'd chosen a different word for that, and we might make it a synonym, which would be something like harden, okay? Because what you're actually doing is taking that prompting and you kind of hardening it. You're putting a security architecture around it. You're saying, I'm going to run that prompting, I'm going to run it in a coding agent, but that's going to be, we're going to create the YAML, which puts it in a nice box and gives it a nice secure thing and puts in a threat detection step as just an extra step. And I think that's the right kind of model to use. Is what I want an automated tool which will just make me feel good, safe about running that running that coding agent in GitHub Actions, and where that we run that YAML through several checkers as well, Action Lint and Zizamore, and there's another one as well,
Poutine Runner Guard.
Okay.
Ooh, spell that for me because I don't know about that one.
P-O-U, like the food, like the Canadian fries.
Like the gravy and the fries. I love
the gravy. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I'm already in. Sign me up.
Yeah. So we run those tools. They caught some things in the YAML, in our hardened YAML. And so there's a lot of goodness there. And there's something you can hand off to it means your security team, if you're doing this in an enterprise, can actually check that YAML as well. They get to see what's going on. They get to see the full security architecture and check it matches up with what we say. They get to see the exact container settings and its firewall settings and what's mounted and what's not, and so on. The guardrails are good, and I love the security architecture and the confidence it gives me to run fast with agentic automation.
So back to building educational runtimes, and you think about velocity. What this sandbox gives you is, in the strict mode, a guarantee because that you're not going to leak secrets. So you're going to have a reading-only token with your, the agent wants to see your agents, and that you have a very specific, precisely where the agent is going to be able to mutate the world, right? Because all the rights are transactional and then we validate them. There's a number of layer guarantees, and you're in full control saying, I will allow you to do one issue, as Scott said, or I will allow you to open a PR. Right? So from a practitioner point of view, these are your deterministic guarantees. Then this allows you to go wild on the prompt side and do bash star and do YOLO, because you're going to YOLO inside of the container, not on your dev box where all the secrets are. You're going to YOLO in a container that has no secrets that, you can't escape unless you break out of the container. But that is insanely empowering because now you can try things without second guessing everything. You can try things faster, more tools without taking down the whole house. That will take you from trying things very carefully with AI to actually go much faster because you have safety. So people underestimate the fact that...
To give an example, it means you're going to write prompting of things like, okay, agent, work out the test coverage in this repository and improve it, okay? Find the big holes and assess the value and choose the highest value bits and improve the test coverage. That means it's actually going to possibly install tools to be taking test coverage. It's going to be working out the command line invocations to kind of do that. Stuff. This is a C++ thing, the impossible stuff of ever taking coverage of a C++ repo or something like that. And it's going to be reading the files and it's going to be doing everything, right?
Yeah.
And it means you can keep your prompting general, and the agents will use the full power of the software engineering toolkits that it's got available. And one of the magical things as well, you're running in GitHub Actions, and people take those VMs for granted, and the system side of what's built there, because that's, I don't know, how big are the images now? Like hundreds of gigabytes or something, terabytes.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of secret ingredients that make Action an amazing platform.
Yeah. So that means every time your agentic workflows, or in fact your YAML workflows, are kind of waking up or running, they're running with all the world's software engineering tools, kind of very, very efficiently available in well-known installed locations and all sorts of things. And that gives them a super powerful, they're just incredible what they can do.
So for example, if you think about the actions and the features you have, every run is recorded. Every run, you can store artifacts. You have APIs to read them. So we store the agent session. The sessions that are sitting on your dev box individually, they're kind of lost. We store them. So we analyze them, we optimize them, then we debug them. So the automated agentic workflows are primed to be optimizable, debuggable, because we have full history. You run things 5 times, you realize you always do the same MCP calls. What happens? You tell the agent, move these MCP calls to steps. And guess what? Because we're Action, we can do a mix of deterministic, just good old steps, and agentic. So let's say your agent does, give me the 10 first pull requests, and it does the GitHub MCP. That is an agentic step. It eats a bunch of tokens. But now you move that into a GHPR call as a step, drop it into a JSON file, and let the agent do JQ bashing that. Suddenly your agent is eating 10 less turns, 20 less turns. You move the dial. That's one of the these are all interesting things we've discovered in actions, that being able to pull the dial between deterministic and agentic, because in your CI, we're 100% deterministic historically, and people have gone 100% agentic. But the truth is, it's going to be in the middle. And the more you're deterministic, the cheaper it is.
The most powerful.
Yes.
That's right. So, and that's why we love being in the actions ecosystem, because those steps can also use the full existing actions, everything in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful.
You can see this gradient coming, right, in your CI. 100% CI, 100% deterministic. But now you start squeezing in a bit of agentic as much as you want. Maybe just a little reasoning at the end of your test run,
Yeah, I do like to point out to those people who are really big on like CI and CD need to be deterministic, and we absolutely have to kind of nail that in order to, because that's absolutely true. We don't challenge that, okay? We say there's a third area, a new area, like a third leg of a stool that we didn't know was there, which is like continuous AI, right? Which includes some of these subjective steps, and it's got different properties. But the continuity is a big part. The automation is what is, and the kind of always aligning with the state of the repo as it is today, which is what we kind of mean by continuous.
The claim is bold. The claim, you need CI and deterministic and fast. This is how you're going to tame the agents. The agents are, little monsters.
It's the ultimate gate.
This is the golden era of CI.
Yeah.
The teams who don't have CI will not benefit from the boost.
Yeah. I've often thought or described it to people that are asking me, like, where I get started. And I talk to them about that, you're probably not going to rewrite your Docker build workflow to be agentic. That's probably not the area of focus. I would imagine that the majority of these are net new workflows or expanding an existing workflow to do things it couldn't previously do, not rewriting my reliable test runs. I mean, maybe there's an AI that's going to help me automate parallelism and all that, but it's separate from maybe the run.
It's really important we get that deeply, because the way one of my friends put it is like the CI/CD, and in fact GitHub in many ways, is where that grown-ups are in the software development process, right? That's we're all going crazy about doing our coding agents and YOLOing on our local machines and whatever we're kind of creating. But in the end, the place where you build confidence in an organization, where you really can deploy it, where they're in your CI/CD, and we've got to keep that grown-up mentality about quality. And we want, when we talk about code improvement, we're talking about proposed code improvements, which have to get through the gates, right? We're not talking about things that they should come with test improvements, right? They kind of match that, just like you'd expect from any pull request. So we absolutely have to keep CID being the place where the grown-ups are, and keep the mentality that goes along with that, as well as having a more flexible idea about automation. And we want to really empower the DevOps people. This is like what it's all about, is like we feel there's just this missing piece of the puzzle in the AI story, which is where we empower the people who run the repositories to use AI to their benefit. We know some people are suffering in the open source world from AI coming in from third parties. Right. We want to empower people, so the maintainers and the people who create the repos decide what automation runs in their repositories for what goals, under what cost trade-offs, what quality trade-offs and everything. They're the ones who can balance those things in the context of the business goals or the open source goals that they kind of have. And empower them and not don't just make them suffering kind of recipients, that make them. Yeah, and they'll see so many new uses for it. That's one of the things. This is job creation all over the place, in the sense there's so many opportunities to do work we could never have done before. Performance optimization is a good one. This is literal job, or at least work creation, because the people up close to the repos are the ones who know where the suffering is, where the unenforced invariance, unenforced quality, the opportunities for improvement which were never explored, and the legacy code which can actually be brought back alive and actually serve a role going forward, or transition to a new system or whatever.
Yeah.
So many opportunities for work once you get into the right mindset. And it's a golden age for DevOps people it's lots to learn, but it's a golden age.
Yeah, I have often, the more I've understood the mindset behind your creation of agentic workflows and how, like my first realization was, if I start looking at this log file, most of this is deterministic. It's relatively long. It doesn't look anything like something I would write in a GitHub Action workflow, but it is really just mostly a framework around, at least when I first got started, around controlling and protecting and guiding to this very small part that's actually a model prompt. So,
that's right. There's somewhere in the middle, there's an invocation of a coding agent, but you put all this apparatus around it to say, we're going to make that safe. We're going to make that guard. And go on, Peli.
Yeah, there is something new, actually. If you look at agentic workflows, it's a big YAML. I mean, by this time, we support a lot of features, but you don't even edit this yourself. I mean, at least in the ideation phase, and until you reach your 90% done, this is done through an agent. You don't actually you have to come in with your intent, what you're trying to achieve. And we've done a lot of research. We have this prompt that is going to try to generate the best agentic workflow for you as a starter. But there's also a completely new experience where, as an automator, you use an agent to design that automation. And then you can fine tune, and run the compiler deterministically. But this will get you from 0 to 80% without actually having to read the documentation. Because you come in and say, you name your scenarios, and you know the keywords, issues, PRs, build, workflow, run, test. The agent has access to your agent MD. The agent has access to all your actions. So if you already have CI/CD, the agent can read your CI build, figure out how you build your software, how you run your tests. And one thing that is great about Action is that it is baked into the LLM. LLMs today know very well Action. They know how to write the YAML. They know the entire schema. They know how to refactor it, because people have been blogging about the actions forever. So there's like this free, we have this format is actually designed to be close to what the agent would expect, because then you get this magic where it just knows it. There's no fine tuning needed. You can tell it to refactor the prompt into steps. And it's like, sure. I mean, yeah. And it knows the ecosystem. It's going to go and pull in the right custom actions to do actions, GitHub script, or to do checkout and all this stuff. So that is also part of the magic here, is that not only we're leveraging a platform, but we're leveraging the fact that the platform is already trained in the model. You don't need to load a skill to learn actions. It is already
some new product.
Yes.
Bret, can I just share my screen briefly?
Oh yeah, sure.
Just want to show one thing to kind of get across why I'm so excited by this.
Let me
all right.
Hold on a second. Let me pull that in. I don't have that button on my Stream Deck. 1 second.
You can see it.
I can see it, but I need to put it on the screen for everyone else to see it. I need to give it a guest place. And then let's see. There we go.
All right, brilliant. So I just want to briefly mention this particular workflow. This is a workflow. You just install one of these in your repo, and it kind of helps you maintain the repo. Okay, it's the thing I mentioned before, repo. And it's really simple getting started, and it's super. And it's kind of how it works in the diagram here. Kind of selects a couple of tasks, it reads the memory, and these are the different tasks that might do issue labeling for you. It might do issue investigation and the other things. And you can configure this, and you can edit. You can say add a new task to do this or this, and and it kind of just works on a daily rhythm or hourly rhythm or whatever rhythm you want. And I kind of have written that up in a kind of blog post, and you can kind of see how it works. But I just wanted to share this really, which is this report we've written on the impact of using Repo Assist. So if you go look at what's on the screen, you can probably guess where we started to use Repo Assist in this particular repository. There's a number of issues that were open in the repository. So this was a pretty much dormant repository, but with a backlog, right? It's got us, I, as a maintainer, sort of stopped engaging with this because I didn't actually, each of these issues would have taken me sort of a night, probably, in a traditional way to kind of re-engage with the issue. And even if I was doing it manually with a coding agent, it would have taken me significant 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour for each issue. Okay. And instead, you've got the automated AI effectively burning through the backlog, commenting on it, making pull requests for it, and like actively, proactively kind of solving all of that backlog. And I mean, boy, it allowed me either to close out the backlog or actually fix the backlog and make, I think, some of this was feature requests as well. So it actually kind of took the repository forward as well as implementing features. And we've got 3 major new versions of this component out in as open source releases, and that repository is now in a good state. RepoSys continues to run, so if there's any more, it's now running sort of on a weekly kind of basis as a cost control. And if any new input comes into the repo, new issues, it will start to do its kind of magic. It will look after that for me. And of course, I'm still in control. The human's still in the loop, but you can just get the very dramatic difference it makes between the software with bugs to software that is actually maintainable and fully usable. And it's not just one repo. Here's another repo, the same workflow. Here's another one. This is a different maintainer, so it's not just me. Other maintainers picking it up, a slightly different descent. But after a month of sort of this thing ticking away, the repo's in excellent shape. Here's another one. This is something I co-maintain with somebody else as a different trajectory. And here's another one where there were good reasons to leave a lot of feature suggestions lying around the repo at the end of the kind of the as acquiesces at the end. So cool. super happy with how this is going. This one, the maintainer actually only comes back. It sort of didn't want to work on this full time, didn't want to crunch it a whole lot away. It was just kind of happy just to kind of come back to it every few months and kind of this graph will keep going down step by step. So the report we're looking at is, just to bring it up to the top, is the impact of automated repository maintenance assistance. And
you wrote a blog about this, right?
And yes, there is a blog about Repo Assist in general. And on my, just grabbing this, here's a link to our new report from GitHub Next. And it's on our GitHub Next site as well.
Yeah.
So check that out. Where was that report?
Yeah. I think, to me, one of the most exciting things about all of this, and we've been hinting at this the whole time, is that as a CI maintainer, as someone who's, I call it the middle gray area of the software development lifecycle, where it's post-commit of the developer, but it's pre-production running, and everything in that middle has been like, I can remember if we go back to even 2018, I can distinctly remember at DockerCon and at KubeCon, we were talking about what was the next wave of innovation, because we felt like the container ecosystem had matured and we kind of knew what that looked like and how to move things around as images. And that was all well defined. And at the time, we were all talking about the CI platform as the next piece of innovation. And there was all this discussion around different startups that were getting funding because that was going to be the next opportunity for innovation. And there was experiments that, GitHub Actions workflows were probably part of that. Like that was a part of that wave. It was awesome, but also didn't seem to always fulfill the promise of what we were trying to innovate on and reinvent in the CI space. But I feel like we're finally at this moment where I might just be able to do all the things I always wanted to do to fix on the platform, the maintenance, the toil, the backlog, the endless backlog of things that needed to be optimized or locked down or scanned or improved, like documentation. And that management always tended to, focus on the feature set. Those of us in DevOps are always trying to help them understand and that there's more than just adding features. We need to maintain the system. SREs are a thing now. So we all get this, we at least get someone in production that's helping to optimize the production information. But I feel like the CI platform is still this sort of, if redheaded stepchild is a thing we still say, like it feels like the thing that still doesn't get the love and nurturing that it always needed. And I've lost count of the number of places.
My view, it's the center of the factory. It is the software factory where all the growing up stuff happens. So much of the forward progress happens beyond maybe feature development, which might be done by Agentic local, or Peli actually does a whole lot in the CI. It's just everything. He wants a feature implemented, he just writes an issue and everything comes through. It's amazing. The software factory is real. And
so you're not prompting, you're issuing. Your issue.
No, I skipped the issue. I set a prompt directly, but a lot of it are agents that create issues. So the issue is a work queue.
Right.
mostly. So a part of the work, which is maintenance and code improvement or documentation updates, would be produced daily by workers. But what you're saying is right. It's up until now, you could have a sloppy CI, and for example, you could rely on a good dev team to kind of trust they would do the right thing, not the quality. This is not true anymore. The only way you're going to leverage these agents is to have a very, very tight CI with a very good test suite, and not just one test suite. You need test of the test, integration test, first test. I mean, you bring it because you need to triangulate them so that they cannot escape that box. And then once you have that, you can get the boost. The boost is the cloud. Your dev box, there's only so many eyes and so many terminals your eyes can handle. So I don't know, if you're a spider, you get 8 eyes and you can maybe do 64 terminals. In the cloud, I can easily run hundreds.
Okay,
there's like no compare.
Yeah, let me ask real quick, because I think one of the things I love about this, or I try to optimize in this show, is to change behavior, give people an insight that will actually cause them to do something different, rather than just executive overviews. Not that we've been doing that, we've been digging in the weeds, but I'm actually very curious, like, when you're on the forefront, can you talk through what your activity looks like when you want to create something new with this CI? So you're prompting the LLM on your local harness, right? It sounds like it's creating the issue on your behalf. You've got a bunch of automation running in the background. Are you asking it to like develop the PR, and then you're going to wait for it to tell you when the checks are ready? Like, are you even going to GitHub, or are you like harness first? Like, talk a little bit through that so that we can get an idea.
I'm a bit extreme.
Sure. That's what I want. I want the red pill all the way.
So first of all, it's fully async. There is no discussion on my part with the agent. I fire and forget through the GitHub Cloud Agent most of the time. So, you go either to github.com and you do new agentic session. I mostly use my phone to do that from the iOS app. So I'm not waiting. That means I can have 5 to 10 agents running at all times. And it's just like playing chess on multiple boards. Now, they take time. So fire and forget. What do you do between the agents? You think about your feature. You have more time to think, or you talk to people. In fact, you have more time to talk to people because the agents are doing the work. How is this going to change your work? So that's a very big one. People are into the tokening. They look at the token falling down and it becomes a slot machine, and they get addicted. They get headaches and stuff. They're tired. Yeah. Don't have, just schedule the work, let it churn for a while, come back. So that's one big thing. Now, when I determine that there's a pattern, I'm doing the same stuff all the time, or there's like something I'm thinking in my head of an automator, whoa, I could do that again. There's some value to that. So the most obvious one of the first one we wrote was like, this agent creates a lot of duplicate code. And it did it in kind of a very subtle way. It would rewrite string functions like string start, string split, but in different ways. So I had this idea, okay, maybe we look at the function titles and we ask the agent to bucketize them by intent. So because the body of the function may be completely different, but the intent of the function is the same. So you open your phone and you say, create me a daily agentic workflow that uses some LSP to list all the functions, or regex to list all the functions in code base, bucketize them by intent, pick the biggest bucket, and now generate a prompt that says remove all these duplicates. That's it. That's all you have to do. Wait 5 minutes, you get an agentic workflow as a PR. You review the PR, you look at the safe outputs, which are saved by default. This is your first version, probably not efficient, but it's going to run. It's going to burn a lot of tokens. It doesn't have the right MCP. It's not optimized, but it kind of works.
Yeah.
And you're like,
concept.
This is real value. Then, we iterate and so forth. And this concept of, I've got something that knows me in my code base, and I can get goodness. I can get slight improvement in a human consumable way, which is basically the daily newspaper concept, is insanely good. First of all, it's super fun. You feel good because my code is better now. It's a new way to also handle the agent, because upstream, that means you don't need the perfect PR. You can work in a feature branch. You can go faster by not doing the 17 nits because you have cleaners now. You have tools that are looking for patterns that are known to happen with agents. They're going to happen. And by the way, humans were terrible at coding too. I forgot that. But so now you clean everything, human or non-human. You clean all the patterns. And by now we have 27 or 50 running. So we have also a summarizer that looks at them. I don't have time to look at them. I have something that mines them, track them. But it's always started from, there is something I'm doing all the time, and I wonder if the agent could actually help. And this is important. Like, I don't know at the moment I'm writing agentic workflow, whether it's going to work or not. But my time, my experiment costs me 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I'm not investing 3 months to build a static analysis tool like we used to. Like, hey, maybe this works. And some of them are just terrible or just too expensive, or but a lot of them are like surprisingly good. Then you put the right MCPs and so forth. Then we optimize. By optimize, I mean, think of an agentic workflow as a concretized plan. You've done Sash plan. You paid for Opus. You burn a lot of tokens. You've got a really good plan. That one is now set in stone in your agentic workflow. That means you can go for a lower model to implement. And then you can start splitting into submodels and everything, lower your tokens. And all of these are hyper specialized tools because the clearer the goal, the better the agent is going to be. So these are all kind of intuitions that we build, that we've kind of measured, that we use. So it's like a plethora, like an insane amount of very, very specific tools.
Yeah.
Linters are a good example, this kind of tools we've built over the years. Linters have rules.
My favorite thing, and I think I might even have it in my global agents file on my machine, is always lint at the end of every edit you make, or at the end of every run of an edit you make, because I don't even want to look at what your output is unless it's past linters. And I think the minimum, like you mentioned the action length, and this is more, and these are like table stakes for me for GitHub workflows. I was just curious real quick, what does optimization look like? Is that just improving prompt when you're...
So many things. Yeah. So you want to have the same performance, the same reasoning at a lower cost, right? That's really the end game. You don't want to degrade your performance, but also you don't want to pay. You cannot just pay Opus all the time. So there's a lot of tricks in the bag. We talked about moving turns into the step side of the action, pre-computing data. Also, this grounds the agent. You do the computation, you cook some Python, you give it the pre-fed computation with all the aggregates and say, now reason on this and don't do any computation. Don't make up numbers, right? So that's also a trick too. But then other things are using small models. So splitting a monolithic prompt into a prompt plus small models. Typically, for example, if your task says, go and summarize files, the file summary can be done by a small agent, a sub agent, then comes back with a summary, right? Now you've actually went from a 6x model, Sonnet style, 6x to 0.3. You've dropped by 20x your cost per token. And of course, there's the prompting and we have A/B testing in the platform. So when you run at scale over 1,000 of repos, you can start doing campaigns and field test, prompt improvement, and measure in a scientific way, in a reasoned way. Just like, think these are really websites, right? At the scale you're going to run these agents, my belief is that it's not really an eval thing. It's more like a website where you do A/B testing on features. You're going to do A/B testing on prompts or model and so forth. And measure, as you're spending the money, measure whether they work or not. It's really hard to build evals when you have hundreds of agents and everything's moving all the time.
Right.
But
that's a lot of eval runs in addition to the agent runs themselves. Yeah.
But A/B testing is a proven way of fielding improvements and measuring.
Yeah. And in terms of, the people on the call watching this, one of the big behavior changes and mindset changes is like, what's your future work going to be in an enterprise, right? It's not just running over one repo, but you're going to be the agentic maestro or a team of agentic maestros who are able to do things at scale across tens, hundreds of repos into a major organization. That might be about applying security patches or making judgment calls about the impact of what it means to roll things out. It might be making things more regular across those repos. It might be improving the test, assessing the test coverage across the repo. If I was the CTO of a major all companies, software companies these days, I'd kind of want a summary report up of what are all the repos we have? What's the status of them all? How do they cluster together? What technologies do we actually use? And not just based on what we think we use, but actually assessing what we actually depend on. And so there's so much, it's even on information reporting kind of going up, even before you get to kind of improving all of those different repositories. Yeah, I think there's I've been worried for a long time. Some of these, in London and there are a whole lot of investment banks down the road. I've worked with some of them over the years, and I actually am really worried about some of them. I'm worried about their software. They tell me they got 20,000 production systems or something like that, right? And it's just it's insane. Is the software legacy debt that they have across those systems is just huge. Luckily for them, the tools have now come along which can deal with that, but they need agentic maestros to come up with the workflows to get a grip on that software complexity through summarization and action and all sorts of other along various dimensions of kind of working. So we're not just talking one repo, we're talking whole the agentic organization and how that actually maps down to actually working with real software artifacts. It's not just something in theory or something kind of some of these automation platforms like Asana and N8N and the other ones, they're much more on the kind of information working side, like working with the HR systems or your ERP systems or whatever. This makes it very concrete to me. Like I now know what the agentic enterprise means for the whole software side of the enterprise. Yeah, it's very real. It's like there's a lot of work to be done to actually crank the handle on that. And a lot of this becomes auth constrained, for example. Who's allowed to do this stuff, right? The ideal job in this world is we have maximal auth and you are trusted. And that is what the maestro really, the grand wizard of the enterprise. That's the ideal job to have in this kind of situation. Well, lots of power, lots of tokens to spend, or can find out what the actual business value work to be done actually is, and you can actually make it happen, not to shout from the sidelines across some organizational divide. So yeah, you want to be part of the grow. If you're looking for a new job or a new career direction, you want to be leading the conversation, say the agentic software, automated software conversation in your whole company.
The continuous AI czar. Maybe we'll
or
workshop
the group.
the
I mean, yeah, the group. I mean, it doesn't have to be a single czar, but yeah, the maestros, the thought leaders in the company, the people who see this in multidimensional ways, who aren't just they're not just nutty and evangelistic. They're growing up about it, but they can use repository automation at scale for positive action across the whole.
It will be the catalyst for a reorganization of software production. The way we build software will change because we will design new processes between agents and humans where, we've been doing the pull request for a while. The agents are kind of, kicked in the door and starting to shake things up, but there will be new ways to build software. And they will, and we are seeing in a way, we're experimenting with all these new kind of flow, information flow and production flow that involve agent, human agent. We do it fast. We have the means to do it safely.
Yeah.
The one I'm currently with is a kind of a software factory image. I've used that kind of terminology quite a lot. And when you said like, what's the action? How do I start my design process? At the moment, it's about saying, let's build a factory where there's actually lots of inputs flowing in. They might be issues of some kind, but they might not be just issues in a maintenance sense. It might be like in the case of GitHub, we have automated tools which find problems in GitHub, problems in the logic of how we use our database. There's N+1 problems and they're similar. So you're kind of going to get these to flow in, and then you've got a whole automation, a mixture of human, and the factory is a place where both agents and humans work crucially. Okay? And when you think of it, the factory, then things can get blocked at the human point. Like even when you get all the automation set up, which is really, really great, it can still get blocked by overwhelming the human with too much kind of generation. And you can either scale that back or you can increase the quality. There may be good reasons why they're doing that. Or you can actually turn off the whole factory because it's not actually serving the human's needs properly. Okay, so the aim of the Agentic Maestro is to design that human, that agent human factory and make it flow, make it work. Because when it does flow, you get those really dramatic results on quality.
Awesome. I feel like this has been a good discussion around agentic workflows, because I think it's not a feature that we see in the UI yet. So I feel like it's still really early days in terms of getting everyone to be aware that this thing exists and how to go about implementing it. So I'm excited about talking more about it, and especially now that I feel like you're giving me more reasons to pay more attention to it, because I'm realizing that even though I've dove into some of it and implemented some of it, that I'm a babe in the woods. I'm a babe in the woods right now. But
so wait. Yeah. So wait.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you
time.
The last question or the last topic before we wrap this up. You're both one of you is GitHub Next, one of you is Microsoft Research. You're basically both already thinking years out. My assumption is that there's things that are coming. So like this is all brand new to us. I'm sure it's still very new to you. Like what is the thing that's coming? Not that this is ever replacing this, but like what are you excited about for the rest of the year? What else is it more finding more places that this can operate, or like sussing out the real value of where these workflows are running and sort of like maybe making the top 5 list or the top 10 implementation list? Like, where is it that you're looking to, in the short term, take this? Anyone want
Peli, you first?
volunteer?
We're still in techno preview.
Yeah.
In a sense, we're still in first gear. So very excited to see where the product is going to go, and we're going to really be able to go out and try it out. We have intuitions about what's going to happen on massive scales. We haven't really done it.
Yeah.
And they're excited to actually learn. Everything's fine when you have 1 repo, 10 repo, but we are very much looking forward to 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 scenarios. And now looking at large scale agentics, and all these scales economies are going to happen through that. Personally, I think it's a golden era of CI. I mean, if there's one thing out of this discussion is, stay in CI. It's going to get good, because everybody's going to turn to you and say, how do I run my agents in your CI? How do I do more agent stuff and do all these, I've heard this and I want to do it in your CI, and they're going to turn to you.
Yeah, they're also going to turn up and say, hey, can I use OpenClaw inside the enterprise? Because I want to automate doing my PRs inside the repository. And it's just like, maybe you could go learn GitHub Agentic Workflows, because that's actually like it's a pretty safe way of doing automation, right? And they're going to turn up with we're seeing lots of other, we're already kind of touched on the run the naked coding agents kind of approach. And it's like the answer to that is go use GitHub Agentic Workflows, right? Because that's got a security architecture. You can also there'll be other options as well. There'll be other security architectures, but there's an answer to a question that's there. And we chose a continuous AI framing because it's an industry. We wanted to create an industry neutral term that just like you've created agentic DevOps, and they're more or less two very closely affinitized, which is great. And they're questions with an answer, with a natural answer, which is GitHub Actions and GitHub, which from a product development perspective is, I'm very happy to have made those contributions and where we've landed with all of that. In terms of looking forward, there's all the kind of rollout of this kind of agentic workflows at scale, or agentic working in the enterprise. And that's going to take years to roll. The enterprises turn slowly, development teams turn slowly. They've got their own opinions and their own skilling. As I said, this is about, as much as I use the agentic maestro thing, the agentic maestro also listens to the developers, listens very closely to them, because they're the ones up close to the coalface and know how to maximize.
They merge with PRs or not.
And they probably merge with PRs or not. If you're really lucky as an agentic master, you get to merge PRs too. It's like, it's good to have that power. But I'll leave you with one thing that's a little bit further out, which is when we put these workflows together, previously, often they're simulating what we'd imagine each gym to do, like test improvement or test coverage. They're doing one thing, and you can imagine getting someone in to improve your tests and assigning them that job. But nowadays, we can actually get them to use multiple kind of tools and methodologies all at the same time. And so if we look at, say, performance improvement, for example, this thing not only knows how to do the profiling runs and how to write the benchmarking kind of tools and how to do garbage collection optimization. It can also go read the assembly code, right? Which none of us can do, right? We can't interpret that, and it makes good sense of that. And so you can set up, if you really needed to squeeze that last 2 or 3 or 5% out of performance out of some, say, Go-based system, and this might apply to, say, GitHub or something, then you could actually set the agents also adding new optimizations to the Go compiler. Okay, like it can take a private copy of the Go compiler and make its own mods, compiler patches to that to actually improve the register allocation. And that's a multi-skilling thing where you could never find a single person who had all those skills across the board. Right. Performance optimization is full of those kind of problems, right? So, the people who actually know how to make the .NET or Java garbage collectors, the memory hierarchies, and use them really so that everything flows really, really nicely in those systems, they're really rare, the people who can do that. The agents kind of know how to do that kind of work, where you can encode it. So these kind of multi-skilling flows are super interesting. I think that are beyond, they're a bit beyond the frontier of what we imagine these AI systems doing, because it's kind of like little teams of people or little teams of cooperating kind of agents all taking it's not just critique or different roles, it's actually entirely different compatible sort of skills which kind of compose together really nicely. Yeah, so it's one idea.
All right, I think the tagline for this is besides that, is another potential tagline, because it sounds like I've got 5 different options for the title or the tagline. It could be GitHub Actions is the open claw for grown-ups. I gotta think of all the buzzwords I gotta put in there. I gotta have the word agent somewhere.
That's your show.
Your show. Absolutely.
It's got cron. It's got
absolutely.
It's got memory. It's got it can limit the time.
The addition of memory to these GitHub Agentic Workflows. It's huge difference to that, because now they can do research. The first task they do when they haven't done it before is they can go research your code base and actually work out how to do all those depth kind of engineering things that, and kind of keep their own private notes on that and update those notes. Amazing.
We have Action Cache. I mean, we mount memory on Action Caches, on Repo, on comments, in the wiki, plenty of places to store. And then, you've got this long running, we have a project called Auto Loop, which is the auto loop. Think of the auto research or ref loop, not just days, weeks, month, because it's mounted on top of an action run, saves its data into a branch, then action restarts on a branch, and then it keeps going. So if you think about all your inner loop that are doing routes for, let's say, a day, now you have the outer loop of that. That's going to run for a month. So you can point it at the entire code base and say, convert this stuff into something else.
Yeah, but overglow for grown-ups, automation is an incredible thing, very empowering, and it's just, a lot you can do with it, but make it safe, make it guardrailed, and we're very happy to provide a basis for doing this at scale in the enterprise.
We are a weird open source project, but we take bugs as specs, but we've closed so far, see the number today, 633 community bugs since we shipped. So if you're using Agentic Workflows and you find something, run our agents on your workflow and tell it to file an issue. And we've been running as fast as we can to answer the need of practitioners. Most of the bugs we get are from professional CI/CD engineers. And these are really deep GitHub action features that we didn't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Right. Like the esoteric edge cases of GitHub Actions, when someone knows every little nook and cranny of the
Arc runner on GHS with something. We've been looking at that, and there's this thing where the sandbox is closed by design, but we also have the hooks for the pros, for the people who know, to go and plug in the stuff they need, GitHub apps, custom jobs, custom steps, HashiCorp steps to get your secrets. All this stuff is basically, we want to fully leverage the platform, and we want the problem when you do a box that doesn't have the escape hatch for the pros, that then people turn off it, you need to get stuff done, you turn off the security. So we've designed it.
Habits. Yeah.
We've designed it so that you don't have to turn off security to get into these enterprise scenarios that are very complex CI/CD with multiple apps, multiple security, multiple tokens. And things become, the sample we see on the landing page becomes way more, when you start factoring in real life CI/CD constraints, then it becomes, but that is because we build on top of action and we're just an increment, we inherit all that goodness. We're in all the ecosystem. So, the call for action is try it out. There's something you don't like. We've been running as fast and responding to, we only have a backlog of 30 issues and we've closed 630. So we're on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Your agents are on it. You're on top of the agent.
Yeah. No, we don't take PRs. People run the agent on their side. There's a full investigation on their run with their secrets. Then it's anonymized, and then the agent files a generic issue.
Nice. And that's just built in.
It's a crazy way to do all stuff.
You're right. It's built in. It's built in feedback loop. All right. So this has been awesome. I'm so glad to have both of you here. I'm very excited about the future of this. I've been a heads down GitHub Actions guy for a long time, and I feel like this is my whole new thing. And this episode has convinced me that I should have spent a lot more time the last 3 months on it than I did. You've convinced me, and I'm excited to get into the weeds of this. Where can people find both of you?
Certainly, if you want to contribute ideas to the design of GitHub Agentic Workflows, or even just feedback on using it or examples of using it, there's the repo.
Make your pitch.
Feedback and find us. Make a pitch for a new feature, a new coding agent, or something you think should be supported. And it's all open source, so you can kind of see it all and work it all out even before it gets to us. And
ship on Mondays.
You ship on Mondays.
Yeah, you can, and for me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn and my blog as well. I'm mostly on GitHub
and you can find me on LinkedIn. But
Nice.
please file an issue with your idea, why you think we should have it, with the agentic plan. Burn some Opus tokens on making your claim. A lot of them were one shot and they became code.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
the turnaround, we've got some 3-hour turnaround sometimes if you're in the right moment in time between filing the issue and getting a release. This is agentic speed.
Yeah, I've been playing around with GitHub Mobile more and more, and so the fact that that's your workflow, that's your process, is convincing me that I need to lean into more of that, because it's a habit that I don't have yet. Like, I don't have the muscle memory to go, I have an idea, let me jump into my GitHub app. So I need to break that. For everyone listening, it's github.com/gith-aw. Obviously, there's a bunch of websites. You can go to githubnext.com to see all the exciting stuff coming out of the research. Basically, just it's a whole list of smart people that I basically want to invite all of them on the show for some things. I think I just saw the presentation from AI Engineer London, the new team-based agentic harness mindset. I am like, that is my next. I saw that demo and thought, this is exactly what I've been missing and what my teams probably want, and a replacement for Slack and like all these other things. So I'm very excited about that one. And I was like, immediately went to sign up for the beta. I don't know if she realized that there might be a whole lot of signups, but when I shared it out, I got a bunch of responses from people going, oh yes, not just yes, but hell yes on that. So I'm excited to see how these two areas merge, and I can have the prompt crowdsourced from my humans, and like we perfect the output of possibly how these GitHub Action workflows are going to be created by an agent.
Brett, thank you for having us on. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you in the next episode.